We break down where Drake Maye has to improve individually to have a breakout 2025. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I am your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, also host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and a sports talk show host veteran. On today's episode, the wide receiver room has plenty of bodies, but we still have plenty of questions. Meanwhile, on the defensive side of the football, Terrell Williams, the expected defensive coordinator, will talk about him and how his status will impact camp. But first, Drake Maye faces a crucial year 2. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. I believe Drake Maye has all the potential in the world. I believe he could potentially be a top 10 quarterback in the league eventually. Now, how fast he gets there, a lot of it will have to do with this season and the steps that he takes. Does he take a step forward? Does he take multiple steps forward? And by the end of 2025, are we looking at Drake Maye saying that dude's a top 10 quarterback? Or we feel really good about the opportunity of him becoming a top 10 quarterback by 2026? Are we having those conversations? I believe he has the potential to be in those types of conversations, and I'm not the only one. Pro Football Focus recently wrote about Drake Maye, and he was picked as one of their possible fantasy football breakout quarterbacks for the upcoming year. This was written by Jonathan Macri of Pro Football Focus. Maye didn't get a chance to take over until week 6 in his rookie season, but flashed plenty of potential as a fantasy difference maker heading into year 2. Maye finished as the overall QB 21 on the season, tied for QB 17 in points per game, but with an improved offense, an upgraded coaching staff, and another year in the league, Maye has the potential to deliver top 12 numbers in 2025. Now, some of you might say, Nick, you're getting this all twisted. You're talking fantasy football. Well, when we talk about offensive players, if you are a top 10 or top 12 player at any offensive position, that means you produced. That means you produced consistently, and you're still stacking that production up against fellow quarterbacks, fellow receivers, fellow running backs. That's how it works. So yes, we're talking fantasy football in this instance, but if you're a top 12 quarterback in fantasy, that means you're a top 12 quarterback in the NFL, numbers-wise. And that's what we're looking at. The production of Drake Maye. Is he going to take that step forward to be a top 12 quarterback by the end of this season? Could he possibly be a top 10 quarterback by the end of the year? Yes. He could be a top 10 quarterback by the end of 2025, but it's going to depend on whether or not Maye improves individually in a number of different ways. Let's start out here. Drake Maye in 2025 needs better pocket awareness. That was a weakness from time to time in his rookie season. And when we talk about pocket awareness, we're talking about understanding where the rush is coming from, feeling the rush behind you, but also, while you understand the rush is on its way, hang in the pocket, stay in the pocket, exhaust your progressions. We saw this during his rookie campaign where, there would be just a little bit of pressure coming his way, and Drake would feel a little bit shook, get out of the pocket, scramble, and run for his life. Even if the pressure wasn't breathing down his neck, he felt like it was, and he would tuck and run. And while I understand the idea of him tucking and running because the offensive line was so putrid last season, I truly understand why he felt like he had to get out of Dodge before it got ugly. I do understand why, but there were too many times where he felt the rush that really wasn't there, cut the play short, and ran out of the pocket. He needs to have better pocket awareness. He needs to hang in exhaust those progressions, and improve his pressure to sack ratio, which is a key number when you look at quarterback play. And it's interesting, Patriots Analytics, going back a couple of months ago, wrote this on Blue Sky, and I stuck a pin in it because I knew eventually I would get here. One area of concern for Maye, pressure to sack ratio. This is something which is often stable year to year and something rookies often struggle with. And when you look at this graphic that Patriots Analytics posted on Blue Sky, you see that Drake Maye had the 5th highest pressure to sack ratio in the league last year. Number 1 was Will Levis, and we know how bad he was. Number 2 was Caleb Williams. He didn't have a great rookie season. Interestingly enough, Jaden Daniels, this was a number that Jaden Daniels had a hard time with in college. He had a hard time with it again in his rookie season, no matter how spectacular he was. He had the 3rd highest pressure to sack ratio. Jalen Hurts, that's interesting. So your 2 NFC championship game quarterbacks were in the top 5 when you talk pressure to sack ratio, which tells you it's not the end of the world, but it is an important number. Drake Maye was there 5th, 40.96% pressure to sack ratio. If Maye can improve in that number, it's telling us that the pressure is not necessarily leading to sacks. The pressure is not leading to disasters. And you'd like to see him hang in a little bit more and have better awareness. Here's a second thing I want to see from Drake Maye, and this might be your first thing you want to see from Maye in 2025, and that is taking care of the football, ball security. Mike Vrabel, in almost every press conference in the early stages of his Patriots tenure, has talked about ball security. Take care of the football. We need to take care of the football, make less mistakes, take advantage of the opposition's mistakes. Drake Maye needs to lessen. He has to lessen the amount of turnover-worthy plays, because when you look at his rookie season, that was a major issue. Evan Lazar at Patriots.com recently wrote about it, saying there are areas that Maye can look to improve in 2025. We're talking about him right now. Thank you, Evan. Mainly, he had the 6th highest turnover-worthy play rate with 15 total turnovers in his rookie season. So he had the 6th highest turnover-worthy play rate in the NFL last year. 15 turnovers in 13 games. And, of course, I don't know how much you want to count the garbage time against the Jets when he first got into a regular season game. He also left early against the Jets at Foxborough when he got that concussion. So you're talking only a quarter and a half between those 2 games. So he really only played, 11 games, 11 and a half games, and he had 15 turnovers. And the turnover-worthy play rate was too high. He put the football in harm's way. Now, some of that had to do with his receivers not separating. Some of that has to do with the offensive line giving up way too much pressure. But some of that is absolutely on Drake Maye. And when we talk about ball security, we also have to understand that Maye is likely going to run more this season. I would expect Josh McDaniels to call more designed runs than Alex Van Pelt did in 2024. And we saw some of that where, like, the loaf of bread from Drake Maye as he's running with the football, ball security, take care of it. Something else that Drake Maye needs to do a better job of is anticipatory throws. And now part of this will be quickly learning the McDaniels offense, being comfortable with the verbiage, being comfortable with that relationship with his offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach Ashton Grant, having chemistry with his receivers. But he needs to anticipate better than he did in his rookie season. Ted Wynn of The Athletic wrote this: Maye's mobility was a difference maker that couldn't block last season, but there were times when he could have avoided pressure or sacks by throwing with a tick more anticipation. So that goes back to the pressure to sack ratio as well. If you're anticipating things, you're running it through your head quicker, you get rid of the football, you save yourself, you save the pressure, you save yourself from a sack. And we all know those can cause some major issues, including what we just talked about with turnovers. So if Maye does a better job of anticipating what's happening in front of him consistently in 2025, he will be a better quarterback. Now, Nguyen also did point out that Maye did a better job of throwing with anticipation later in the season, particularly against zone coverage, which would tell you Maye was learning during his rookie year like a lot of rookies do. And he got better. He progressed. And I would imagine he'll continue to get better with this. You got upgrades at wide receiver, O-line, OC. That should also help Maye feel like he can get rid of the football sooner rather than later. So I think Maye will be better with anticipatory throws. He'll get better with pre-snap reads and adjustments. He'll help the offensive line because of that. He will understand his outs. He will understand those outs more quickly than he did in 2024. If he gets better in those areas that we just addressed, if he improves, and I do think he's going to improve, he has a chance to be in that conversation by the year's end of being a top 10 guy. Some of it, if not a lot of it, though, will depend on the wide receivers. And the wide receiver room will be a focal point of this camp. We'll discuss how the pieces might or might not fit next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Guys, you have probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. And you got to love that it's completely online. Rougiette connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships you treatment discreetly to your door. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. We are on the eve of camp, and we've got a wide receiver room that is full of bodies, full of questions, and hopefully full of competition. And ESPN's Ben Solak recently wrote about the Patriots wide receivers. He's fascinated by this group to see how it all unfolds. Here's what he wrote. In this pass-loving era of the NFL, it's quite rare to find a team with a receiver room in which every single role from X to Z to slot is up for grabs. But that feels like the case in New England, where new coach Mike Vrabel must field a functional group of pass catchers around second-year quarterback Drake Maye. There are hundreds of targets up for grabs in the Patriots offense. No exaggeration. Someone needs to emerge in August if this offense is going to take a step in the right direction. Wholeheartedly agree? I think you wholeheartedly agree with Ben Solak. So let's look at this wide receiver room, and let's begin with Stefon Diggs. We talked about this on yesterday's episode. Seems like he's going to be fully ready for day one of training camp. Looks like he's going to be shot out of a cannon just about 8 months after ACL surgery. It's pretty amazing. If he is out there day one, if he is ready, then I believe Stefon Diggs is going to be your number one slot receiver. He's going to play a lot in the slot. He played a lot in the slot last year in Houston. That was his primary role. He's getting older. He's not as explosive. He's not necessarily an outside guy consistently. He works more in short and intermediate areas now as he's into his 30s. So he can play the outside, and I think he'll play some on the outside. But the primary role of Stefon Diggs, I believe, is going to be in the slot for this Josh McDaniels offense, which leads us to a number of questions. If Diggs indeed is the number one slot, what does that mean for Pop Douglas? Pop Douglas has had a great early camp. He was really good in OTAs, really good in mandatory minicamp. He's been off to a great start, but Diggs, he was not taking on those 11-on-11s. He was off to the side working with coaches and working on drills. If Diggs is out there, how do you split the usage up between Diggs and Pop? Because Pop showed you something. He has showed you something through the first 2 years, and he showed you something during the OTAs and minicamp. So how do you split those up? Interestingly enough, Solak wrote about Pop Douglas playing in the slot, and we always view Pop as a slot guy because that's where he's been put, even though we did read that during OTAs, during minicamp, at times, Pop showed up on the outside. But here's what Solak wrote at ESPN. Douglas is just okay at slot receiver. Among 27 players who ran at least 60% of their routes from the slot last season, he ranks 17th in yards per route run and 19th in first downs per target. Now, yes, some of that has to do with quarterback play. Some of that has to do with the offensive line play. But the point of Solak is Pop Douglas is a good slot receiver. He hasn't necessarily been a great slot receiver when you look at the analytics. And Solak writes, that's not prolific enough to have a stranglehold on that role, and any smart usage of Diggs includes a decent diet of slot routes. So you got to mix that up. Not only do you have to mix up the usage between Diggs and Pop in the slot, you also got to look at Kyle Williams. Now, Williams was drafted to be that X receiver. He's going to be on the outside, I would imagine, a decent amount. That's how I envision his role. But Solak also wrote about Kyle Williams in the slot. He wrote the following. There's also the wrinkle of Williams, a 5'11", 190-pound speedster who, you guessed it, deserves some snaps in the slot. You also have Efton Chisholm that's going to be in camp. Chisholm got off to a great start during rookie minicamp and OTAs. Mandatory minicamp took a little bit of a step back, but people around the team have talked about Chisholm, and they believe he has a chance to make this roster. And so if he makes the roster, what are you doing with all these guys? Diggs going to play a nice chunk in the slot. Pop Douglas, you would imagine he has to play a decent amount in the slot. Are you going to try to sprinkle in Kyle Williams snaps at the slot? If Chisholm makes this team, he's a slot guy. I don't think he's playing on the outside. Are we going to have a slot receiver by committee? Is that what's going to happen here in 2025? Do you have enough snaps for all of these guys to work out of the slot? Going to be some very difficult decisions, and it's a fascinating camp to watch all of this unfold. Let's keep talking about Kyle Williams. The X receiver, the outside guy, that opportunity with this particular team is wide open. Matt Collins is going to start camp on the PUP. He was brought in to be your big-bodied X. We talked about it yesterday. Well, if Hollins is out, he's on the PUP to start camp. We don't know what issue he's dealing with physically. If he can't get out there quickly, that's opportunity for Williams. That's even more snaps that he can get. Kayshon Boutte. What do we think about Kayshon Boutte? Well, Ben Solak wrote about him and another receiver when looking at the X. Diggs and Williams can play on the outside, Solak writes, and probably should to some degree. I agree with that. Diggs will play some on the outside. Williams has to play. I don't think some on the outside. I think Williams has to play the majority of his snaps on the outside. That's my 2 cents. Solak writes, how much will be decided by Kayshon Boutte, who got the Lions' share of snaps at X receiver last season but failed to impress. He also mentions Jalen Polk, who fell out of favor with last year's offense, was a top 40 pick in 2024. I'm not banking on Jalen Polk, and I think Kayshon Boutte's inconsistent. We know that Boutte was at least in trade talks conversations before the draft, probably during draft weekend. I wouldn't necessarily hang my hat on the idea of Kayshon Boutte being your X receiver. So Kyle Williams, step on up, my man. Step on up. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Rookie season, you're going to get a lot of snaps in training camp. You're going to get a lot of opportunity. And you should get a lot of opportunity. And see if you get anything out of that. And if you do, then you get more opportunity. That's how it works. So slot by committee, I don't know. X receiver, does Kyle Williams grab that from Matt Collins and Kayshon Boutte? Does he have a good enough camp? He was a little bit up and down, OTAs and mandatory minicamp, as you would expect from a rookie. But does he find a different gear in training camp? Can he be that guy? And, of course, you got to balance the opportunity for Williams without overloading him, overwhelming him. We know Elliott Wolf brought that up with Jalen Polk. He said part of the problem last year was that they asked way too much of Polk way too early. You don't want to do that with Williams. So there's a balance. There's a balance of giving him those snaps, giving him that opportunity, but also not making the young man feel a little bit overwhelmed and put too much on his plate. And that'll go to Josh McDaniels. This is why you want McDaniels, experienced OC, respected OC, because you've got a lot of guys in that wide receiver room that could play different roles. And, it's not only McDaniels having to scheme non-separators, which they still have some non-separators in that group. He's got to scheme those guys open from time to time. He has to find the right roles for each of these guys with this versatility. Find the roles for each and every dude. And can McDaniels get anything out of Polk and Baker? I'm more confident about Polk than I am about Baker, but I'm not overly confident about Polk. Going to give him a shot. Deserves it. Liked him coming out of college. Haven't completely given up on him just yet. But it's going to be up to McDaniels to do a lot of work with this group. And, of course, wide receivers coach Todd Downing will have a heavy, heavy hand in it as well. The latest on Terrell Williams and how his status impacts upcoming training camp. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Workplace stress is at an all-time high. 61% of the global workforce is reporting higher than normal stress levels. This summer is the perfect time to take small steps to focus on your wellness and manage the challenges that come with your workday. Of course, most of us can't just quit our jobs or take endless vacations, but we can start small, whether it's getting outside for a few minutes, adding movement into your day, or talking to someone who can help you navigate life's challenges. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. Yes, you might have a busy schedule, but the flexibility of online therapy makes it easy to fit sessions into a busy schedule, no matter where you are. BetterHelp is awesome. You got to check it out. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, you and your friends. Why not make it a little more thrilling? And we're getting close to football season. Awesome options with FanDuel. You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach right now as you prepare for that football season. Now, I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups. The app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Again, $5 to get $150 if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today, or you can visit FanDuel.com. And when you visit FanDuel.com, make sure you put /LockedOn to get started. Mike Vrabel is meeting with the media on Tuesday, and one of the biggest questions about this training camp that starts this week is whether or not your expected defensive coordinator, Terrell Williams, will actually be at camp. And Mike Reese wrote about this over the weekend at ESPN, and he wrote one of the top storylines when the Patriots begin training camp will be whether Williams is present after remaining away in the spring following a quote-unquote health scare. Vrabel hinted at the end of spring practices that things were trending in that direction when he said, quote, he'll be here soon, and we're excited about that, unquote. Among other things, Reese writes, it would lessen the burden on inside linebackers coach Zach Kerr, who is handling Williams' in-person role in the spring. It's a significant question. One of the top coaches on your staff, he has not been around, at least in person. Now, I know he's been Zooming, and I know he's been talking to Zach Kerr, and he's been talking to players, but he has not physically been on the field working with these guys. And it begs the question if that's going to change this week. Now, if Williams is not at training camp, it might be time to start thinking about how to handle the DC role in 2025. I mean, if Williams is not ready, we're now in late July. You're a week or two away from having a joint practice against Washington, and then you follow that up with another joint practice against Minnesota. You'll be playing preseason games in a couple of weeks. So if Williams is not there, and we certainly hope that he is, but if Williams is not going to be at training camp, if we find out he's going to miss at least the beginning of training camp, you really have to start wrapping your head around how you're going to handle the situation. Because now it's getting even more real as far as football goes. Life, it was real from the beginning, and we're very happy that Williams got through the health scare, according to him, and is on the mend. He's ready to come back as far as, life goes, day in and day out. But when we talk football, it gets much more significant this week if he's not around. Does Mike Vrabel step up and end up being the de facto DC? Is he calling defenses during these joint practices and during the preseason? Or will that fall onto Zach Kerr? Kerr's been, again, as Reese wrote, filling in for Williams in person while Williams has been out. But that would be a lot on the plate of Zach Kerr. And he's only been coaching for about 4 or 5 years in the NFL. So he's still relatively young to be handed the responsibilities. Now, Williams has spoken highly of Kerr. Vrabel has spoken highly of Kerr. They obviously feel good about him or he wouldn't be around. But is he ready for that type of responsibility? Is there anybody else that you could give this job to? Mike Smith, outside linebackers coach, pass rush specialist, Clint McMillan, your defensive line coach. Is there anybody else on this staff? If it's not Vrabel, it's not Kerr, and Williams isn't there, if he's not there, he can't call plays in via telephone. He can't text plays in to Robert Spillane while he's out there on the field. So who will take over if Williams isn't there? We certainly hope that he will be there. The expectation based on what Vrabel said at mandatory minicamp would tell us that he will be there. But if not, who takes the reins? Because it's too late to add somebody from the outside. It's too late. You can't bring somebody in from the outside in mid to late July and say, this is what we plan on doing. This is what we're going to run. Like, the playbook is set. Guys have been hired around the league. Who would even be available? If somebody is available, are they any good? There's a reason why they're available in July. So I don't think it's reasonable to expect the Patriots to say, okay, Williams is going to be out. Let's make a move. Now, you would also believe if they were going to do that, if they felt like Williams wasn't going to be around in late July and August, then we might have heard something about them talking to somebody outside the organization to bring in for some possible help. And the fact that we haven't heard that makes me feel at least decent that Williams will be back this week. But the outside option, I don't think is an option. You already have a bunch of relationships with the players. You've built that camaraderie throughout OTAs and mandatory minicamp, and of course, rookie minicamp for the young defenders. And you also have the connection between Vrabel and Williams and this whole staff. A lot of these guys know each other. A lot of these guys have worked together. So to bring somebody in from the outside and give them that responsibility, maybe you bring somebody in from the outside and give them, Zach Kerr's initial job, primary job, which is, inside linebackers, and maybe Kerr takes over as DC, but that's still a decent amount of juggling. And I don't love the juggling act in mid to late July. So hopefully Williams gets back, because Williams is important. If he's there on Wednesday, great sign. He has that history with Vrabel. These guys trust each other. They know each other. They can practically complete each other's sentences. Terrell Williams, you believe, would have had a shot at the Lions defensive coordinator job, knowing that Aaron Glenn was leaving to be a head coach. Williams chose to go to New England because of the relationship he has with Vrabel, because they're close. Williams is very experienced. He's the kind of guy that sets the tone of a defense by the way he talks, by the way he walks, by the way he handles guys. He's a tone setter like Vrabel is. And he has a great reputation. So we certainly hope Williams is going to be there. When we hear from Vrabel this morning, later today, hopefully Vrabel tells us that Terrell Williams is in town and we don't have to worry about any kind of unnecessary headache or juggling job by this coaching staff. Hopefully everybody is in line and ready to go by Wednesday's practice. Hopefully. All right, that wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Reach out to me on Twitter at NickCRadio. And don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. And don't forget to help us out. Hit that like button and subscribe. Helps us with the algorithm. Also, the Locked On NFL Top 100 is available on Locked On Sports today. The NFL Top 100 was voted on by the NFL hosts of Locked On. Don't miss where your favorite players were ranked right before training camp. Subscribe to Locked On Sports today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow. Training camp kicking off.